It's been about 2 years. A lot of life has been happening. Good things, not so good things, interesting things, just growth, realizations, and changes that I honestly just wasn't prepared for. I needed to take some time to really figure myself out. I really just needed to sit and understand what I want. Now, to be clear, I'm still figuring some parts out. But for the most part, I have a good outline as to what it is that I want for my life, how I see myself, and how I want to be seen. I think I have a better understanding of what it's going to take for me to see those things come to life. I was struggling with that because I'd spent so much time grinding, surviving, and building for everything and everyone else that I just wasn't sure what it actually looked like for me. I stepped away because I was drowning in my physical health. When I finally got a doctor that truly listened and was willing to try different things, I ended up on a medication regimen that significantly changed my numbers. I was able to receive technology that significantly changed my day-to-day. Physically, my numbers on paper were great. They were going in the right direction. They were going down, which is what we wanted to see. I went from a 8.9 A1C to 6.5 in my first 90 days of this regimen. And what continues to make it interesting is that I've been on metformin for years. Variations of it. Two things got added, the CGM and the Ozempic. I feel like the CGM did more. The CGM gave me the ability to understand the decisions I was making, as well as other things going on with my body, like sleep. That was the true beginning of changing the way diabetes has affected me. It's frustrating that it took so long. It's frustrating that I sat for 6 years struggling, trying to find a way to get these numbers down. The environment that I was in, the relationship that I was in, the jobs that I were in, none of those things were helping in that. And so when I finally got a CGM, and I finally got out of that relationship, and I finally got out of that environment that I was living in, things changed. The job stuff was still a little chaotic, but it wasn't nearly as bad as it was previously. And not that even previously my jobs were bad, I just couldn't maintain because everything else that was going on in my life was causing my job situations to be basically detrimental to me. So in receiving these things, I started to really tune into myself in so many different ways that I really hadn't before. When I started the podcast back in 2020, it was just shy of when the pandemic really hit. I got laid off right before all of it. It was in that downtime that it dawned on me to start this podcast, because I finally had the space and mental room to think about, what did I want and why haven't I really made moves on this? Why did I keep this brand up? Why did I keep this domain name up? What was the point? Anytime anybody brought up talking about living with diabetes, why did I perk up and say, yeah, I started this thing, but I didn't really do anything with it I started digging into that and realized that the medium at the time that I was trying to just share my story and in hopes to connect with others was the wrong one. I've been listening to podcasts for years at that point, probably about 3 years at the time. And I grew up in home studios. It was just like, oh, duh. You don't need to write so much. Even though I enjoy writing, I felt like I needed to write medical dissertations about my life because I was nervous about misleading people. All you need to do is hit record and talk about it. That's all that you've been doing with people. You've been having conversations. You've been telling your story. You've been sharing what you've experienced. And that's how this started. I decided that since I bought the domain, I've had it since 2015. So I was like, why don't I go ahead and just make it an LLC? At this point, podcasting had been huge and it was only continuing to grow. And I'm like, this is what I want. I want to be able to create content, share it, and it hopefully help people, but it be something that can sustain me. I can be creative. So let me get ahead and just start this process. With the help of my partner, I filed for my LLC. And that was when Healing in Hindsight was officially born. At that point, I had 1 season out. I batch recorded 10 or 12 episodes. And it started. I was doing this while working full time, dealing with the pandemic, the wild cultural climate at that time. My partner had to do the COVID mission because he is in the military, stressing about him traveling and all of these things. We experienced a lot of insights. We experienced some trauma. We experienced some growth. We experienced some heartaches. All the while, I kept pushing for this. Then I did season 2. Then I did season 3. Then I started to do season 4. That's when it started to get a little shaky because I had decided to step away from the role that I had been with because my health had started to take another nosedive. I had started to really consider looking into more than just talk therapy for myself. I decided to not immediately go back to looking for a job. I ended up on short-term disability. As hard as it was, I told my family, I think I need to take 6 months. It ended up being a year, but at least the next 6 months to just try this out. I did manage to sustain myself for a bit. I got a couple sponsorships. I was able to pursue and do things that I never thought I was going to be able to do. I was the master of my own time. I got to wake up and create. I had help from my dad, who was my producer. He edited all of my episodes, which was great. So it's like I had a team, even though it was just me and my dad, and I loved that. I really was starting to build out something. I'm doing all these things. And my savings start to run out, hitting a wall with building a true audience and building recurring income on my own. I was starting to think through rebuilding and coming back because I just couldn't let it go. I would be doing myself a huge disservice if I gave up now. What is it that I want from this now? What I realized is that just how the way that I was managing my diabetes evolved, the content that I wanted to share, the things that I wanted to talk through, needed to evolve. I hung on to Healing in Hindsight, not only as a business and a brand, but as a name because of so many layers of what it can mean. What I really deep down realized is that I needed to talk through what healing meant through my experience so far in a big picture way. Because zooming in on life with diabetes and the challenges that comes with that really isn't easy to explain without completely zooming out. There were a lot of subtle passive things happening that aided me as I sit here right now. I am no longer required to take diabetes medication. And I've been wrestling with, does that mean I'm free of diabetes? Does that mean diabetes is in remission? Does that mean I cured it? I think I have accepted I am holistically managing my diabetes, which is what I wanted. But I will be honest with y'all, I did not think I would actually see this day, which probably sounds a little wild considering I started a whole brand new business around me working towards no longer needing medication to manage my diabetes. That was the very core original purpose of me starting this. And here I am at that point, almost 10 years. I know there are a lot of people that don't have that kind of choice. Them coming off their medication could mean life or death. Them not using a CGM could mean life or death. And I don't take that lightly. But for me and my story, I am able to do that. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful every day that I was able to do this and that I'm continuing to do this. Really decided that if I was going to really come back, that I needed to come back and it be bigger than just diabetes. Because during the last 2 years, not only have I continued therapy, but I've also started seeing a psychiatrist. And I realized that I have ADHD. Being diagnosed officially and understanding that some of the habits and ways I was doing things was just a product of a chemical imbalance in my brain was a whole new world for me. Battling with anxiety and depression, understanding my mental health aided in my physical health. I had to start creating routines and habits, having conversations with myself and digging deep into my mind and spirit about things going on with me to understand why I do things the way that I do, to realize that I need structure, but I need structure that has some flexibility, to realize that I can do anything and everything for other people because I have this deep-seated fear of being a letdown or disappointment or wanting to be helpful. But at the same time, when it comes to doing stuff for myself, it's a struggle because when you are the person that has to run everything and you advocate for yourself, it's 20 times harder. And you generally don't know if it's you, the ADHD, the anxiety, the depression. You don't know which it is because they all just come together and have a beat down party on you sometimes. I decided that Healing in Hindsight needed to evolve into a way that can address so many more things that impact how you navigate through the world and how it can translate into some of the things that you see. When I look back at my life, when I was first diagnosed with diabetes, it was more than just, yes, I was overweight. I'm still technically considered overweight, which is why I don't like that our medical system and our culture has conditioned us to believe that weight is the end-all, be-all, and answer to that. And it's continuously being proven that it's not. But if we are not looking at the unique things that make up a person's body, then we are missing out on opportunities to really help people because we're going off an archaic system that wasn't even considering bodies like mine. We have to look at more than just that. Healing in Hindsight has to be different. We all got to work to live in some capacity, whether that's you're your own boss and you're creating content or you're going the entrepreneur route or working for somebody else. Either way, we all have to find some way to survive and have a comfortable livelihood, whether that's for ourselves, whether that's for families, things like that. In that time away, I got married. Sadly, we haven't been able to have her, but we did go to the courthouse, and I am legally married now. That also provides another angle of needing to take care of my family and my household. We have a house, dogs, and bills that are not temporary. We own this. We have to maintain it and take care of it. So working became even more important in order to be a supportive partner. I realized that my physical health, mental health, spiritual health, environment, who I associated myself with, who poured into me, who didn't, play a role. But now the thing that provides access to so many things and my ability to even get my medications, that also plays upon me. Some of my early years in living with diabetes, I struggled very hard because I could not live up to my professional abilities. I could not live up to the professional name that I had built. And that was frustrating and aided in my mental debt. That caused me to actually lose a job at one point because I was so sick. I realized that it is a constant battle to balance all of these things. Somebody looks at me if I say, I live with diabetes, and decides to tell me that I just need to lose weight. And yet here I sit in normal A1C range, no longer required to take any type of medication. I wasn't eating great. I wasn't always exercising. Actually, I really didn't exercise much. But the things that I did do was change my environment, change who I associated with, got real deep into my mental health, got really honest about myself as a professional, and started carrying myself in a more authentic way as a professional. There are so many things that took place to get me to this point. That is healing. That is what this is about. All of those things. Being balanced and being true to me in the way that it's meant to be for me. My unique blueprint of all of those things is what led me here. And I feel that everybody should have that. I want to understand myself in such a way that not even a microscope can tell me about myself better than me. And I think that is the thing that we should do. It's just how can we understand ourselves better, and how can we navigate our environments better to suit us? Because diabetes is very unique to the individual. There's different types of medications. There's more ways to go about this. There's more options. There's so much that we are not considering. Instead of treating the person in the unique environment that they're in, we just treat symptoms. I think we should all take a moment to think about how each of those different areas are impacting us, whether you have diabetes or not. That to me is the true reason why I've healed. Eat right, exercise, lose some weight, and you'll be. For some people, that's the answer. Absolutely. But that wasn't the answer for me. I am fully vested in bringing everything that I've rebuilt, refreshed, and refined in these last 2 years in a way that could benefit anybody. I want to ensure that I'm reaching the people who feel stuck between obligation of self, obligation of others, and trying to navigate themselves as a professional too. All of those things are hard. And trying to do all of that and possibly deal with an illness, yeah, it's not easy, man. But you can do. talk about it.